Yeah, thank you very much as various media houses in Juba for today's event. Today's event as a Community Empowerment for Progress organization, through our Election Domestic Watch, which is a program, we are trying to share our first pre-election stage domestic observation report, because as you are aware that the Electoral Commission was reconstituted yesterday, and immediately after the reconstitution of the Election Commission, as a civil society, we have responsibility to provide an oversight observation on the preparation for the election. So this will be our first report as a first election domestic report under the pre-stage of the elections. Our focus that we're focusing on really openness of civic and political space that determines public trust and confidence on the forthcoming national general election proposed for December 2024. To share with you a bit of our concerns that we have raised as civil societies, that we believe that elections is a requirement by the revitalized peace agreement provisions as the end game of the political transition of our country from violence to peace. So it's something that the parties have agreed upon. But we are aware of some concerns that we feel we need to raise as our first domestic observation. And the concerns that we are raising in the rationale that if really South Sudan parties want to have a democratic, free and fair election, right from the pre-stage of the electoral process, we are calling for various political parties in South Sudan that one, they should really avoid these contradictory political messages that normally they have, and this contradictory message is misleading the public in terms of achieving the goal of having an election, and specifically in various social media platforms. The other thing that we feel is very important to raise today at the pre-stage of the election is that South Sudan political parties should be careful of acting an early politicization of the functions of the party influence with the National Election Commission. What we intend to do is that we are worried that some of the members among the National Reconstituted Election Commission belong to political parties. So they should not take their party politics into the function of the Electoral Commission, because the day they take the oath, they are supposed to be neutral as the mandate of the Commission requires from them. To share with you key observation findings that we have, we call them 15 points of action. So let me start the key observation, or what we call 15 points of action that we feel is essential for the pre-stage of the elections. Number one, we would like to say we urge the members and the leaders of the Reconstituted National Election Commission to avoid party politics or political party interference in administering the affairs of the Commission. Number two, South Sudan political parties need to be careful of early acts of politicizing the function of the National Election Commission. The act of early politicization of National Election Commission by the parties is dangerous, and it will create a public undermining of the credibility of the National Election Commission. The third one is the leadership of the Commission should sincerely and honestly commit to observe the principle of impartiality, non-partisanship, and remain as independent leadership. The fourth, we urge political leaders to have political decisions that are required. What are these political decisions that are required? You are aware, colleagues in the media, that there are preconditions for the elections, and the preconditions for the elections that are there required by the agreement. Number one is population census, having a constitution, having security arrangement, but also we don't have judicial reforms per now. Electoral disputes management is one of the preconditions. So based on this, as a civil society, our fourth call is that we wish the political leaders should make political decisions on preconditions that are associated with the creation of an environment for the conduct of the election by December 2024. Without proper political leadership consensus for the conduct of the elections, chances of having violent election is easier, especially at state level. I would like to stress that as a CEPO, we see elections are going to be more violent at state level compared to the national. And specifically if the political leaders have not made any consensus around managing the preconditions that are required by the agreement. The fifth point, we're calling upon political leadership should act urgently on allocating adequate funds for the establishment of the National Election Commission, Political Parties Council, and the National Constitutional Review Commission. Inadequate or low financing of the electoral process will create a moment for undermining credibility and reliability of the process. So we're trying to say now, as these three institutions are reconstituted, the leadership need to allocate money for them. Otherwise, if the money is not given for them timely, if we wait for another period of time, the credibility and the reliability of the process will be undermined. The sixth is delaying or personalization of the National Election Commission may contribute in affecting the preparation for the conduct of the national elections in December 2024. So if we delay to operationalize the National Election Commission, as you are aware, the National Election Commission is supposed to have units, it's supposed to have offices at the states level, it's supposed to have its logistical units, it is supposed to have all the requirement, technicalities. If we delay that further, there's a high chances that might affect the preparation for the conduct of the election. The seventh, that the National Election Act 2012, amended 2023, requires some review for compliance with best practices of electoral process through the development of the electoral rules and regulations. If you look at the National Election Act right now that we have, this National Election Act, in terms of mathematics, it has a problem. I'll give you the problem in terms of mathematics. What is it, for example? The seats that we have per the Act for the Parliament is 332 seats. And President is given 5% to appoint. Now, if you calculate 5% of 332 seats, it gives you 16.9. Now, if you round that 16.9 as a 5% of the President, it gives you an odd number of 315 that you cannot divide it to 50-50 between proportional representation and geographical representation. It means President will only appoint 16, so you don't round it up, in order to have an even number of 316 seats that you can divide 50-50. So those mathematical challenges require a review, and the review should be corrected during the development of the rules and regulations. Number 8 is incidents of violation of civic space. How small scale it is, like surveillance. If there's any violation of the civic space, how small it is. You are aware that sometimes surveillance is a violation of civic space, where media houses will see people who are strangers touring the offices of media houses or around where journalists sit, or journalists are followed by strange people, vehicles, number plate, all those are surveillance. So as such violation of civic and political space, how small it is, still it impacts negatively on public trust and confidence on the credibility of the electoral process. So if there's any surveillance coming up, that may challenge. And of course, you know, civic space is very important. Number 9 is restriction of political freedoms on association, assembly, movement, and campaigns for all political parties. While one or more other parties are unrestricted in conducting political campaigns, it will have direct negative implication on citizens' belief for free, fair, credible, and peaceful conduct of elections. So it means if other parties are not campaigning and some specific parties are campaigning and some specific parties are controlling the campaign, citizens will not have that trust that elections are going to be free, fair, and credible and peaceful. Number 10 is that civic and voter education should be so much driven by civil society, media, and faith-based groups for effectiveness. So it's a high time that the commission have to ensure media have a big role, civil society have a big role, and faith-based organizations have a big role to deliver civic and voter education. Why? Because they don't have any political interest at attack, and they can act effectively. And that also goes in line with how much is media allow and civil society and faith-based to exercise their civic responsibility without any restriction. 11, ongoing clashing of political messaging about the elections preparation by the political leaders do create sharp increase in citizens' doubts about the credibility of the elections. You might have seen today in a paper, one political party have said another political party is afraid of the elections. For them, they are prepared for the elections. Such messages, it will really, really create increase in citizens' mistrust on the credibility of the election process, because people are supposed to have one language. So the message is that political contradictory message is challenging. 12, to win the intended inclusive elections where youth and persons with disabilities gain meaningful participatory representation, it requires the National Election Commission to develop clear rules and regulations for that. So for us to have the youth and persons with disabilities and women to get involved in the elections with the meaningful participation, we need clear rules and regulations. 13th, National Election Commission should develop clear rules and regulations for qualifying the electoral ratio of 5% appointment to the National Parliament by non-partisan and not any politician who attempted to contest and failed to win. So the 5% given to the president, we are demanding the National Election Commission to develop rules and regulations, that these rules and regulations meant to bring people who are non-partisan to benefit from the 5%. For instance, minority group Tribes that are minority, that may not constitute a constituency, they can be appointed through the 5%. Either people like veterans or people like a person with disability of a specific scale. So if we have the 5% to be given to politicians who contested and they fail, they have been appointed by the 5%, we don't believe that 5% have a good intention. The best intention of the appointment of the president for 5% is to ensure that those categories are appointed. Number 13, the National Election Commission should, number 14, the political parties should enforce effective electoral gender agenda for their respective parties' level. We're trying to say, let the political parties at their party level enforce election gender agenda. What am I to intend to say here is that when elections comes, there's a high chance is that nominations of candidates are done in midnight. Then women participation become low. Sometimes you come to realize that the men are the one dominating nominations of candidates. So women participation becoming low. So that is what we're demanding as the 14th. Our 15th action point is that effective election-related violence early warning should be developed, and faith-based leaders and civil society should be entrusted with the responsibility in mitigating election-related disputes. So what we're trying to say in the 15th, in number 15th, we're trying to say civil society, religious leaders should be given the responsibility to manage any electoral-related disputes. Because electoral disputes are supposed to be managed by the judiciary, but unfortunately we don't have a judiciary, so that is where we're calling for civil society and religious leaders to be given the responsibility to mitigate any electoral-related disputes so the elections will be peaceful. In conclusion, we are trying to call upon the political parties and the government that domestic election observation is an eye-opener for political leaders in the country, for political parties, for citizens, at least to look at the expected election of December 2024 seriously. And we feel that there's a need to have a sincere and a serious commitment, which is required for the political leadership, the political parties, for timely and genuine political decisions for meeting the schedule of December 2024 as intended, okay, for holding credible, free, fair, and peaceful elections. Political leadership and the political parties are required to really change their political attitudes from act of feet dragging. You know that always our political leaders like to drag their feet. So they need to change their political attitude from dragging their feet to proactive engagement. That's very important. The issue of timely and genuine financing of the National Election Commission, National Constitutional Review Commission, and the Political Parties Council, including securing security arrangement for the conduct of the election, should be taken seriously by the presidency as a mechanism of a top political leadership in the country. As you are aware, the mechanism of the presidency, headed by His Excellency President, and then His Excellency First Vice President and Vice President, is a mechanism that have a responsibility to make political decisions in terms of financing the National Election Commission, the National Constitutional Review Commission, the political parties. Citizen trust and confidence on the conduct of the elections is critical and key for the ownership of the elections results. But this happens when civic and political space remains unrestricted. Inclusive elections where persons with disability, women and youth have meaningful participation and representation is required. The worst beginning for losing citizen trust and confidence on the electoral process is when various government authorities start restriction of civic and political space for civic engagement. Allowing one party or selective parties to enjoy civic and political space in the starting stage of the electoral process, it will be the beginning of a grave mistakes for mistrust and loss of confidence on the electoral process. Rigging of elections begins with an act of controlling and restricting civic and political space for other civic and political actors as pre-election stage is concerned. Finally, these 15 action points we proposed from our domestic election observation report are essential for the political leadership and the political parties and the citizens to consider. CEPO will continue releasing monthly domestic elections report. So those are the findings that we'd like to share with you, that we have 15 call. And of course, in summary, our call is calling that we need to see the leadership of the newly reconstituted National Election Commission to remain impartial, to remain independent, and the members that came from political parties who are now members of the National Election Commission to ensure that they don't take their party politics to the function of the Electoral Commission, And we feel that the presidency need to make some political decisions with regard to preconditions that are required by the agreement and timely financing of the electoral processes in terms of financing National Election Commission, National Constitutional Review Commission, and the political parties. Thank you very much. Questions are welcome.